I do not recommend using Duolingo for learning Japanese for the simple reason that it wastes so much of your time without you even realizing it, and there are methods out there that take less effort yet give you more in return. Duolingo is often criticized for its gamification and the occasional quote-unquote unrealistic sentences, but I actually don't care about those. The problem is that when you're doing your lessons, a huge part of your time isn't spent on learning, but instead on solving unnecessary hunt and peck puzzles that have nothing to do with learning anything whatsoever. For example, I'm pretty much fluent in Japanese, but when I try using Duolingo, it's like, 父は盆踊りで屋台を出した. Oh yeah, I know this one. It's like, my father put a stall up at the Bon Festival. Okay, let's see. My father... Where's father? Oh, dad. So essentially, I just wasted 19 seconds on doing literally nothing productive, which may not seem like a big deal at first, until you realize that you're going to be doing time-wasting exercises like this thousands upon thousands of times over the upcoming months and years if you continue using Duolingo, which eventually is going to stack up as dozens of hours, and these are hours that you could have spent on learning or literally anything else, but instead wasted on searching English words to construct a sentence that you already have figured out in your head. Even exercises such as match the pairs waste your time, because as soon as you start spending time on solving visual puzzles instead of being challenged directly by the language itself, your time and energy are no longer being used on learning. Keep in mind that most people only spend around 10 minutes a day on Duolingo, as even during onboarding, they ask you to set a daily goal for yourself, with the lowest being 5 and the highest only 20 minutes a day, which they label as quote-unquote intense. But 20 minutes a day is only 121 hours of studying a year, which for learning a language such as Japanese, realistically speaking, is pretty low. However, at first, and especially if you're busy, it makes sense to focus on spending as little time as possible on learning as much as possible, as you can always pick up the pace later. But if that sort of time efficiency is really what you're after, then Duolingo definitely falls short, because out of those 5 to 20 minutes, how much time do you actually spend on learning as opposed to searching for what English word to click on next? Not to mention, there also are the occasions where you input a correct answer, but Duolingo isn't flexible enough to accept your variations, so you're forced to search for the randomly placed English words all over again. This can also sometimes happen when you have to input your target language, which can lead to confusion if it seems like you made a mistake when in reality you didn't. But anyway, other than Duolingo having mechanics that waste your time, I feel like another issue it has is that it fails at solidifying the vocabulary that you previously learned. Even though Duolingo often boasts about having taught you this many words and whatnot, how many of those words do you think you'd actually be able to recognize, read, and understand if they were suddenly presented to you outside of Duolingo? Making progress at a language heavily relies on you retaining the information that you've already seen in order to build upon it, which requires constantly reviewing said concepts until they enter your long-term memory. And even though Duolingo seemingly does have rehearsal lessons, I feel like most of the time, when you see a new word on Duolingo, you'll never see it again from that day forward, and even if you do, it's surprisingly easy to unconsciously quote-unquote cheat your way through the reviews by being able to pass a problem just by looking at the English word bank, hearing the audio, or by matching the pairs through the process of elimination without being challenged by the Japanese enough for it to actually refresh your memory. And if you only spend around 20 minutes a day on Duolingo, it's very unrealistic that you'll have enough time to review everything in a timely manner, as you probably spend most of your time on moving forward in the course, and actual reviews take much more time than you might expect. For example, let's compare all of these problems to a spaced repetition flashcard system such as that of Anki. You are shown a new word and you have to get its reading and meaning correct. However, you are the one who decides whether or not you got it correct or not, and if you did, you hit good, and if you didn't, you hit again. And every single word you take is going to be shown you again indefinitely over the upcoming days, weeks, months and years, the frequency of which depends on how well you remembered it last time. And when you think about it, this solves pretty much every issue with Duolingo at once. First of all, it means that there is literally zero time waste, as there are no unnecessary actions, and because you are the one who decides whether or not you got something correct or not. And secondly, once you see a new word, there is a very high chance that eventually it's going to enter your long-term memory as you keep reviewing it over time. There is also no way to quote-unquote cheat your reviews because you don't have any potential answers already laid out for you, meaning that your memory will be properly challenged. And once you've built a foundation of a few thousand words, you can combine this with sentence mining, aka making your own flashcards every time you find a new word from content that you're either reading or watching, and if you stay consistent with that, you got yourself a time-tested, simple method that will take you to complete fluency. Of course, it's still going to take you thousands of hours over the course of multiple years, but that's just the reality of learning Japanese. There are no shortcuts, but there definitely are ways to make it take longer. I recommend watching my complete guide on how to learn Japanese for some additional very important details, and on this channel, I've also documented my entire Japanese learning journey from a complete beginner to fluent. So even if you only have 15 minutes a day for learning, your efforts are going to be much more rewarded by doing 15 minutes of something such as Anki with the Core 2K 6K deck, as opposed to 15 minutes of Duolingo, where half of the time will be wasted on bloats and the other half will lead to weak retention of the information that you've learned. Also, as an anecdote, I'd like to show you a few clips from a video by Mudan where he took the JLPT N5 exam, aka the lowest level of the Japanese language proficiency test after nearly 600 days of using Duolingo.
So I've done Duolingo for like 2 years, which is like 10 minutes a day. And now I started Wanikani because it teaches me kanji. How far can I get with Duolingo, Wanikani, and some street smarts? And this is where I realized Duolingo doesn't... It teaches you so much less than you thought. If there's one thing to take away from the video, then it's the fact that I used to be a Duolingo apologist. I thought, sure, it's not going to teach you the language, but at least you'll know the words, you'll get better at it. But now that I did the test and realized, I mean, I've done it for over 500 days and it barely helped me with N5, that's messed up. That's messed up. I don't know if I can do Duolingo anymore.
You can watch the full video for more context and I'll let you decide what to do with that information yourself, but I also used Duolingo for over 800 days. In fact, in 2021, I already made a video on Duolingo where I reviewed it and explained why I stopped using it. I recommend you go watch that video as well, because I'm skipping a lot of the things that I said there, but even 4 years later, pretty much nothing about Duolingo has improved. In fact, now, the grammar tips have become pretty much non-existent, the text-to-speech engine still constantly makes mistakes, and they also completely removed the comment section, which was not only pretty fun sometimes, but also educational, especially when the lessons had mistakes in them. I still agree that Duolingo is very good for getting started with a language and building the initial habit of daily learning, but once you've already established that consistency, I'd recommend just saving your limited daily study time on things that will have a higher impact down the road, and ironically, will probably take less effort and be less frustrating in the process. Now, Duolingo also has a paid version that gives you access to a few extra features, but honestly, if you're going to spend money on learning Japanese, I'd recommend instead paying for something such as Migaku, as it gives you access to their brand new flashcard-based Japanese course that's designed and optimized to be actually beneficial, and it will also prepare you for immersion and sentence mining down the road. Now, of course, this video isn't sponsored by Migaku, but I do have a ref link and a video tutorial on how to sentence mine with Migaku in case you're interested and want to support the channel. The reality, however, is that you don't have to spend a single penny on learning Japanese if you don't want to. I also cover completely free methods in my video series on how to learn Japanese, all of which I'll link in the description, and I'll hope you go far by using those methods, as well as actually enjoy the journey at least a tiny bit more than you otherwise would.